Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I am your host, Leah Lambert, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. Today, I have a special guest, Sandy Milner, who is the founder and director of Lifestyle Physiology. By background, Sandy is a sports scientist, an international marketer, former athlete, and most importantly, a mum who is very passionate about health, energy, and performance. After building an award-winning global sport and lifestyle agency in London and 25 plus years in events, sponsorship, and partnership marketing, Sandy returned to her first love, health, fitness, and human performance. Not only is she passionate about helping busy people manage their energy, but she also works with companies and workplaces who are looking to optimize energy levels and the performance of their employees. Sandy is an allied health professional with a Bachelor of Applied Science in Human Movement. She's a qualified stress resilience and health coach, personal trainer, and a wellbeing consultant. As a former 400-meter state champion and national finalist and business founder, she well understands peak performance isn't just reserved for the stadium or for the boardroom. It's for all of us. Welcome to the podcast, Sandy.
Thanks so much, Leah. Thanks for having me part of the show.
I'm so pleased to have you on the show, as I really believe in the work that you do. So I'm really excited for you to share your own career journey and also the work that you do with our audience. Can you start maybe by sharing a bit more about your career journey and what's led you to working in this space?
Yeah, sure. I think my career, it's actually done a bit of a full circle, Leah. So funnily enough, I started with a Bachelor of Applied Science in Human Movement because at the time I was an athlete myself and really had a passion for understanding a bit more about, human physiology and performance. So I kind of went down that road and then ended up doing an internship at the Institute of Sport for a few months, which was fantastic. But I quickly realized that there weren't actually that many jobs back then for, exercise scientists and sports scientists. So I ended up pivoting into sports marketing and management and ended up working on some of the biggest sporting events in Australia. So worked on the Sydney Olympics and then Formula One and MotoGPs. Before then, I wanted to go and explore. So I decided I'd take myself off to the UK. I think I even told you at the time I'm only going for 2 years. But then I actually found myself falling into these amazing roles and had these amazing opportunities working on some of the biggest sporting events in the world that I'd only ever watched on TV as a kid from my own home. So it was a very exciting time. And on that journey, I met 3 really amazing people who then we actually decided to start our own sports marketing agency back in 2014. And that basically started with us, activating for the Rugby World Cup over in the UK. And then during that time, my life actually had a really huge change where I actually had my daughter. And then not long after that, COVID hit, which was a really, really challenging time, particularly for agencies within our sector. And I just found myself really struggling to try and be the mum that I wanted to be and the business partner that I wanted to be. And that real, battle and mismatch of values really started to come to the fore, even coming out of COVID. And I was really suffering with insomnia, ruminating a lot, and just really not really myself and performing that well. And I think I got to the point where I turned around to the business partners and I said, look, I just don't think I can keep up with the pace of the business anymore. And I took this one of the most difficult decisions really, to actually step away from the agency. And they were really supportive at the time. And so I stepped away and successfully exited that, and then found myself needing at least a year to just recover from that experience. It really was probably 20, 25 years of just, burning the candle at both ends, which is what us Gen Xers do so well. and served us for a period of time. But I found myself getting quite ill and had a slip disc in my back. So I went on this journey of, rebuilding myself physically and mentally. And during that time, I went and saw this really inspiring gentleman speak called Oliver Patrick. And he's a bit of a wellness guru in the UK. And he spoke about the wellness industry over there and the fitness industry, and the fact that only 15% of people are members of gyms, and that the fitness industry's got a real marketing issue because they're not talking to the people that need it the most. And that's kind of when I had my light bulb moment. I just thought, what if I could bring my two worlds, my lived experience, my training, my education, and everything all together under one umbrella and really help people who find themselves in a similar situation that I found myself in. So, really busy professionals, parents, trying to do it all, deprioritizing their own health and feeling like they're just, drowning basically. So that's kind of, I went away, I did some research on my target audience, I refreshed some of my skills and came up with the fact that one of the biggest things that eludes all of us, particularly people in that stage of life, is energy. They want more energy, and they want the energy to be able to sustain over a long period of time, so that when their children have children, that they are still happy, healthy, and able to, enjoy family life. So that's kind of where the whole business concept landed. And then since then, I've started with, working with some individuals, and that's really grown into working with workplaces as well. And now I just really love empowering people to really own their own health journey. And that's why we're here today.
Sandy, I am all ears. I would love some more energy. So tell me more. Many people think that productivity is all about time management and planning and prioritization, but I know that you take quite a different view, that it's really about managing your energy better. Can you explain what that means in the context of the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question, Leah. It's actually, you can have all the time in the world and you can have the greatest color coded calendar and daily planner that, on the planet. But when it comes down to it, it's what you actually do with that time that you've allocated that determines whether you're efficient or productive. And what I believe is that it's all down to our energy, because it's the energy that gives you the focus, clarity, and your cognitive ability to perform. So it's really interesting, actually. There was some research that came out not too long ago that talked about something called TAT, which is actually an acronym for tired all the time. The medical professional come up with it because they can't even have the energy to pronounce it anymore. So TAT is actually something that, when they did the research across 32 countries, 1 in 5 otherwise healthy adults report feeling tired all the time and problematic levels of fatigue. But there's actually nothing clinically wrong with them. So that means like 20% of the workforce is feeling these effects. Now, what does that do in the context of a workplace? If someone's tired all the time, they're sluggish, they feel unmotivated, they feel tired, they feel low on energy, they can't think straight. And so this actually has a direct correlation to their performance at work. And obviously, then that contributes to their overall impact on the business as a whole. So really, you can have all the time in the world, but it's actually your output that's impacted when your energy levels are low and not high.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that leads to definitely lack of efficiency, probably impedes problem solving, creativity. So the flow on effect would be enormous, I'd imagine, in workplaces.
Yeah, so if you imagine you've got a task, you've allocated 2 hours to doing perhaps a client report, and you sit down and you're quite tired and you're low on energy, you're probably going to sit down there, and for the first 5 minutes, you're probably going to procrastinate. You're probably going to check your phone. Then you're going to just think, oh my God, I don't know where to start. You're going to probably start to feel overwhelmed. When you do make a start, you're probably going to start to make some errors, which then, your processing and your cognitive ability reduces. And then you might get to the end of the 2 hours and all of a sudden you haven't got anywhere near where you wanted to be. And that really has an impact on your whole self-efficacy. So your belief that you can actually perform and achieve things, which obviously then can have a bigger downward spiral effect. Whereas if you're on the flip side, you come to that task with high energy and you're feeling good, then obviously you can get into that task and you can actually be quite alert, quite engaged, less errors. You really feel like you're making lots of progress, and you get to the end of the 2 hours and you feel really satisfied, because during that time, if you do achieve a flow state, which I'm sure you talk about with your clients around working to your strengths, then you actually release a chemical called dopamine, which is actually your motivation chemical. So that actually gives you even more drive and energy to complete the task. So you can see how these things can kind of compound and actually, really impact overall productivity over the course of a day. So it's really, I guess, important to understand that, by managing your energy, it's really important for performance in both work and life, really. And that really you need to understand, though, where that energy comes from. And that really starts with your physiology and understanding your physiology better.
So, what would be some of the biggest factors that influence our energy levels at work, both physically and mentally?
Yeah, it's good. I actually talk a lot about drains and boosters, and in the workshops that I do, we brainstorm those. And I think it's really important back to the physiology that we do take a step back and we look at evolution. So when we think that our actual body's physiology hasn't evolved that much since caveman era, and then you look how much the world has changed in the last 30 to 50 years. I always use this analogy. We're basically running ancient software in our bodies, but in modern times. So we are physiologically challenged before we even, get up in the morning. So I think it's really important to understand that. And then you've got these layers that the modern workplace throws on us, which it's for many careers, it's largely sedentary. So we're sitting at our desks, we're sitting in our cars driving to work. We probably go home and sit on our sofa. We've got these overpacked schedules where we're always on. We've got back-to-back meetings, calls, deadlines that were due, things due last week. And workplaces really priding themselves on being fast paced and looking for these multitaskers who are really going to be able to manage that. And all of those things really challenge us physiologically. So I think when you consider that, we think about probably the three factors that influence our daily energy that I think are the biggest ones are around how we fuel our body throughout the day. So our metabolism is really important. And I'm sure most of you have felt this before, your mid-morning dips or your post-lunch slumps or crashes. And I call that the metabolic roller coaster. And really what that's about is about what you're putting into your body and then what you're doing immediately after that. So what happens is, in the modern world we live in, so much of what we consume is ultra processed, really high in sugars. We don't even realize, refined carbohydrates. And these have what's called a high glycemic index. And what they do is they push glucose and cause a glucose spike straight after you consume them. And it really floods the system with glucose. And what happens is the body craves balance. So it's always trying to maintain homeostasis. So what goes up must come down. And it comes down in a really steep fashion. And that's what causes these dips and what makes us feel really low on energy. And the thing is, what we do when we feel like this, particularly in the afternoon, is we turn to coffee or we turn to sweets or we turn to energy drinks. And all that does is it might give us a tiny little spike again, but an even bigger crash. So it actually is not even doing what we want it to do. So a big one is around, I think, how we're fueling our body. The second one is the lack of recovery. So this always on mentality. I think, we have, for those that don't know out there, our nervous system has two branches. It's got a sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight. It used to be great for running away from tigers and hunting and things. And we've got our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. And what's happening is because we're in this scenario where in modern day where we're constantly on, we've got constant distractions, our phones are pinging, we've got social media, 24/7 media telling us about really, what's happening in the world. We've also got all of our overpacked calendars. We're kind of on the call as we're emailing. All of these things are basically resulting in us having these overactive sympathetic nervous systems. And what that does is when your sympathetic nervous system is dominant, it actually drains our energy. But when the parasympathetic nervous system is dominant, it actually replenishes your energy. So we're really what we want to try and achieve is a bit of a balancing act, if you like. It's a bit like a seesaw between the two branches, and we're not really achieving that in many cases in the workplace. And I think finally, the big one for me is just this distraction piece and the fact that we're just so easily distracted. Heard this statistic the other day that attention span used to be 8 seconds and now it's down to 5 seconds. And that's quite frightening when you consider that we're not really focusing on one thing at any given point in time. And you really need to do this if you want to perform at your best. And this is what we call a flow state, which I mentioned previously. And this is really where you feel like you're in the zone, you're intensely engaged, sufficiently challenged, you kind of lose track of time. And what happens during these periods of focus or flow is you actually release more dopamine, which is again the motivation chemical, which gives you that drive and energy. And it also activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which replenishes your energy. So work doesn't have to all be stressful. If you can find those projects and carve out those times of focus, it can actually promote that parasympathetic tone, which is really important for energizing yourself.
So, as a mum of three very busy teenagers running a business, I just find most parents I know, there's just no time to rest because you work all week and then Saturday, Sunday morning, you're up really early for sport for kids. How do we find this time to rest and recover? What are some tips that you can give me?
Yeah, sure. It's all about really like routines, creating routines. And at the fundamental level, routines really are about a series of habits stacked together. And these routines do not have to be 1 hour routines. 30-second routines can be as effective, or habits can be as effective as, 5-10 minute habits. So I guess it's about looking at your schedule and thinking about ways that you can inject these. I guess I call them fizzy bursts, or little, I guess, micro wellness behaviors and habits into your day, which over time, it's the small habits and behaviors over time, which really ladder up to big gains later in life. And this is the message here. It's a bit like compound interest with your, bank account. It's like, you can put your 50 cents in every week, and then you look at your bank balance in 10 years from now, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm rich. So your health is exactly the same. So I guess some ideas and things that you can try and look at doing. The big one is like the morning routine for me, and it's a really, really simple way to kickstart the day. So I did an article recently on LinkedIn about this. It doesn't have to be an hour. It can literally be 3 minutes. And what it does is it can really give you that clarity, focus, and energy that you need to start the day off on a positive note. So, a few things and components that really kind of make a really quality morning routine is things like waking up at the same time every day, getting sunlight as soon as you can, and getting some water into you. So that's one. Second is some form of movement. The third is mindfulness. The fourth is having some kind of a balanced breakfast. And the fifth is setting some kind of intention or goal for the day. Now that sounds like a lot, but for example, if I look at my own routine, so my alarm will go at 6:30 every day. I get up, the first thing I do is I make my bed. Now, that discipline of that simple task actually releases dopamine. So you get a shot of motivation from the first second you're out of bed. I then open my blinds, walk out, get some sun on my face. I've always got a glass of water near my bed, have a sip of water, and then I go into the bathroom and either splash cold water on my face, or if I'm having a shower, I might have, the cold water on for last minute. And what that does is that releases more dopamine. So these little kind of exercises really ladder up to, and they only take a few minutes each, ladder up to a really solid morning routine. And even things like brushing your teeth, you can do that mindfully. So if you ground both feet on the ground, taking a nice deep breath, and then turn on your toothbrush, and you really focus on the senses as you're brushing your teeth. So the feeling of it in your gut, on your gums, on your teeth, the tastes, the smell, all of those things. That is mindfulness. You don't have to sit down and meditate for 5 minutes. So this is kind of what we try and do in workplaces, and for individual clients, we try and look at what their routines are like, because let's face it, with kids and things, who's got time to be doing long-winded routines? We want to try and keep them really short, snappy, and things that are achievable, because if they're achievable, they're more likely to stick over the long term.
Yeah, I like that, the compound effect, isn't it? I think that was a book that you also recommended to me, which is a great one. But I like that, just adding those little habits. I do make the bed, but the first thing I do after that is get a double shot coffee. So that's probably, probably should do that a bit later in the day.
Well, research is indicating that, yeah, if you can maybe delay your coffee until maybe an hour or two after you're up. But hey, it's all about baby steps. And this is what I just say to my clients. Like, what happens if you inch that coffee 5 minutes later, just this week? What impact will that have, and how will you feel? And then they try and do that. And then the next week we do, what about we push it another 5 minutes? So the fact is, if you try and make huge, big changes, and this is when New Year's resolutions never work, you just can't stick to them, because they become just completely unrealistic and unattainable. So it's all about small changes and small tweaks over time, and that you're more likely to then create sustainable behavior change from that.
Okay, that's something I'm gonna work on. As long as no one talks to me in that first 10 minutes, I'll be fine.
Yeah, well, sometimes my daughter does some of it with me, so because it's not easy to always, send them back to their room or whatever. So yeah.
Okay, so thinking about organizations where there's generally sort of low energy in the workplace, what would be some of the common signs that an organization is experiencing that?
Yeah, look, I think the thing about energy is it's highly contagious. It's a bit like a virus. So usually it starts at an individual level. So it may start with one or two individuals who are feeling really low on energy. And think about how you feel when you have low energy. Okay. You feel really sluggish. You feel tired. You feel unmotivated. You feel like you don't want to be there. You disengage. And that can really lower an overall team morale. So, what we end up seeing is, there's a number of team, and that can really spread across the organization. So, you see a number of teams starting to feel this kind of low energy and disengagement. And that can really translate into this productivity piece that we talked about earlier. So, when you have low energy individuals and then teams, obviously the output, they're not getting the same amount of work done in the same amount of time. The quality of work decreases. They've got, reduced creative capacity, reduced problem solving capacity. So this can lead to absenteeism, in the worst case can lead to burnout. So what we see is then when you've got a number of people feeling this way, obviously that's going to drain a company's productivity, okay? It's going to drain their levels of innovation. It's going to create a really negative kind of culture and morale across the organization. And that is going to also be projected externally to customers. And so really impact the company brand, but also their competitive edge in the marketplace. So it's really important to understand that low energy in employees is not just a personal health issue, it's a strategic business concern.
Yeah, absolutely. So many flow on effects. And I know, like, the work I do with organizations around, when people use and work with their strengths, they often feel, they usually feel more energized, more engaged, etc. Obviously, leaders, business owners can't control how much sleep their employees are getting or what they're eating for breakfast or how much coffee they're drinking. What are some of the ways that a business owner could cultivate a more positive, high performing environment at work?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Leah, because it's really important that the employees understand in the first place that it is their responsibility, not their employers. And that an employer can foster a really supportive and healthy workplace and culture because there's loads of them out there doing great things in the wellbeing space. But at the end of the day, it's really important that employees understand that it's their responsibility and it's not their employers. So an employer can foster a really supportive and healthy workplace and culture, but ultimately it's a responsibility of the employees to own their own health. And that's quite a hard pill for people to swallow sometimes. But I think it's really important to land that. And then for business owners, though, to empower their employees to own their own health through a range of initiatives. And I think the first one is obviously, getting education, knowledge sharing sessions are really important. That's where workshops and things like masterclasses, group coaching and individual coaching can be really effective. But just look, at the end of the day, everyone wants to be well, right? But often they don't know where to start. And so that's where some of this knowledge sharing and these workshops and masterclasses can be really powerful in showing people, what the path or the journey might be and what the benefits might be. And really to create small sustainable change, it's got to come from the individual. It's got to be intrinsically motivated. And it's about really helping employees tap into why they want to be healthy and well, what the benefits are, and then talking about the strategy and how they're going to get there. So that's one, I think that's one piece, really empowering employees. I think the second piece is, and we do this quite a bit in the workshops that I run, is just coming up with these small sustainable workplace rituals, which can actually be quite fun because you can really drive some positive culture without disrupting productivity. And a great example of this is a retreat I did a few months ago in Byron, where we were brainstorming ideas with an accountancy firm, and they came up with this idea of doing this 2 p.m. tapping, which every day at 2 p.m., they've got a little alarm or bell that goes off, and they all start off with tapping their feet, stand up, and then they tap from their chest all the way down their legs, all over their body to really get the blood flowing, the nervous system going again, and energizing them for the afternoon ahead. And that was something that they did every day, and they still do it. And it's a real laugh. And it's actually got multiple physiological benefits. So it's not just the physical benefits, but then you've got you're releasing, the oxytocin because you're feeling that sense of connection. And you're also just nourishing your parasympathetic nervous system. So little rituals like that are fantastic. And then I think the last one, but probably the most important, is really above it all, the business owners and leaders have to live it. So they really have to become role models within the organisation to show employees the benefits and how small changes and habits can actually, make a huge difference. And we know that from coaching psychology theory that one of the biggest ways of building people's self-efficacy is through role modelling. So they need to, live it, breathe it, own it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we could talk for hours about this. There's just so many flow on effects, isn't there? And if people, it's not just about the quantity and the hours that they're putting, it's the quality of the work they're doing. And I see so many individuals who are working 60, 70-hour weeks who are just completely burnt out. And, it's just not sustainable long term.
Oh, and that was me, and it was really difficult to come to that realization. But, I know that if I had have just managed my energy better and some of the little practices I spoke about today, if I had have been doing that religiously, they weren't time consuming, then I probably wouldn't have ended up in the situation I was in. So, yeah.
Sandy, if someone was interested in working, like individual or a workplace was interested in working with you, how can someone find you and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So you can visit my website. So it's www.lifestylephysiology.com. So that's with a phys with an FIZZ, because that's how I want people to feel, fizzy and full of energy. Or you can follow me on LinkedIn or follow at Lifestyle Physiology on Instagram.
Sandy, thank you for some great tips there today. I'm going to try and work some of those into my morning routine and I will report back and let you know how I go.
Thanks, Leah. It's been great catching up.
Have a great day. And yeah, please reach out to Sandy if you would like to find out more about what she does. Have a great day, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.